welcome to Conversation 473. Rolanda is here, and I'm Callistra Faria, continuing the discussion on issues impacting national development in Grenada, social development, um, economic development, all of the things that affect our daily lives, the opportunities, the challenges that we face under some strenuous conditions brought on by coronavirus and other unique difficulties that we face as a nation. Tonight on the program, of course, news coming in yesterday that Phyllis Cord, a name that is well known to us here in Grenada and certainly the world, the Caribbean, and the world, um, died. She died in Jamaica yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about Phyllis Cord, what who she was to Grenada, and talk a little bit about what kind of legacy Phyllis Cord what kind of legacy will be written about Phyllis Cord, who was died at the age of 73 at her home in Jamaica. Also, students returned to the classroom today. Rolanda, the staggered system begun. Students began returning. The
Oh,
sixth
singing song
grade
is really
students,
bad.
the school that I'm
Let's have a
involved
private
with, the
message.
sixth grade students were asked to come out today for this week, orientation week. And so children going in different classes, going in on different days to get things sorted out and administrative issues being hashed out and looking forward to the proper start of lessons in the classroom come next week. So this is Conversation 473. Among our supporters, we've got our sponsors, and so we'll take a word from some of our sponsors right now, and we will continue with our discussion. It's Conversation 473.
Hi, Kalisha. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. I'm well.
Yes, your audio is not sounding great, but I guess as much we will sort that out as well.
Are you,
Put on my.
are you a soursop farmer? Do you know anyone who is? If so, we have some exciting news to share with you. We need soursop urgently and are willing to pay $5 a pound. Yes, you heard correctly, $5 a pound. Just WhatsApp us at 1-646-651-0204 for more information on how to get your soursop sold for $5 per pound. This offer is for a limited time, so don't delay. Contact us today.
Welcome back to the program, viewers. Is my audio any better now, Rolanda?
Yes, much better.
Okay, all right.
Much better.
Right. So you also might be familiar with Phyllis Cord. Phyllis Cord, an infamous name here for us in Grenada, playing a major role in the rise and an even bigger role, as history has written it, in the fall of the Grenada Revolution. And she has died. She was 73 years old. You may recall that Phyllis Cord was one of 17, the only woman in the group of 17 who were arrested, charged, and tried and convicted for the killings that happened on October 19, 1973, when Morris Bishop, Marxist leader Morris Bishop, as well as Unison Whiteman and cabinet members and key members of his inner circle were executed at the then Fort Rupert, which is now Fort George. At that time, 6 days later, the United States invaded Grenada, and we call it an intervention, but it certainly was an invasion once foreign troops walk onto your soil in a combative manner, then it is an invasion. And so Phyllis Cord was part of the 17 who eventually, a much bigger number were arrested. But at the end of the day, by the time the trial ended, only 17 people were convicted and sentenced to death at the time. This sentence was commuted by the government, the NDC, under the leadership of Sir Nicholas Brafitt, and they were given lifetime in prison. As you know, subsequently they all brought their matters back to court and appealed, and they're all now out of prison. But in 2000, the NNP administration allowed Phyllis Cord to leave the prison, Richmond Hill Prison, where she was among the group serving this life sentence on compassionate grounds, and with a promise to the nation that she would return to prison once she received the medical treatment that she would receive, that she needed. Of course, 20 years later, she has died and never returned to Grenada, so that promise was never kept. In information that I'm receiving, it appears that she was in and out of hospital over the last few years, but certainly she's written a book called Unchained, a Caribbean woman's story from invasion to incarceration to liberation. And certainly she would have been able to speak about liberation because we liberated her. We let her out of prison with, very, very little consequences, I suppose. I remember going to the prison in 1990, was it 93 or 94, and seeing her in her cell in the female section of the prison as part of my sociology degree course. We visited the prison, and she was there. And I remember actually feeling a little, it was mixed feelings, Rolanda. I was angry because we were raised to hate Phyllis Cord. As children in Grenada, we were raised to hate her, that she was this really terrible woman who did horrible things. There's one story that says that she cut open Jacqueline Krebs, the former Minister of Education's stomach, to verify whether or not she was indeed pregnant, or to check the sex of the child, or some horrific story like that, and so on. So she was one of the most hated people to Grenada. And so I remember feeling sorry for her, seeing her in the cell and feeling a little bit sorry, but also angry. And I remember she had her hair back in one in a ponytail, and it was so interesting to see Phyllis Cord, because all I ever saw were these grainy newspaper photos of her during the trial, not very good photos. So it was the first time that I had a really good look at Phyllis Cord, and it certainly was an interesting experience. On that trip to the prison, I actually did get to either see or speak to all of them. I remember Bernard Cord was in the yard of the prison doing exercise, because they were on a 23-hour lockdown. They were only allowed out of their cells back then in the 1990s. They were kept in Jonestown. The men were kept in Jonestown, a section of prison called Jonestown, and were only allowed out for 1 hour a day. And the cell, the conditions in Jonestown really, really terrible. Bad lighting. The place was dark, and the cells had just the little windows, a little square right at the top, and I remember speaking through the door to people like Ewart Lane and so on. And of course, Phyllis Cord was living under much better conditions in the female prison. She had like a big place. I think the floor was even tiled, if I remember correctly. And so on. But the real issue, Rolanda, is what is Phyllis Cord's legacy to Grenada? She was a major part of the women's movement, as you may be aware. She was co-founder of the National Women's Organization, the NWO, and the NWO was a really powerful organization. Back then during the revolution, women were a serious force in nation building. It's not like the joke that's happening now. Really, women were really part of what was going on in the country, and she was co-founder of that organization. She's also a member of the Central Committee. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the Central Committee and the role that they would have played in the battle over leadership with Phyllis's husband, Bernard Cord, on one side, and Maurice Bishop and his followers on the other side of that battle, which eventually imploded the revolution and ended what some people are saying was one of the most glorious periods of Grenada's history. In some aspects, I tend to agree with that assessment of the revolution. In others, not so much. Other areas, not so much. But will history write a positive note of Phyllis Cord or not is the question.
When you look at it,
over the
when you look at
go
it,
ahead.
the revolution, when it had just happened, I was in London, everybody was happy, and we was free. And you see, even now by the Coca-Cola factory, you see there is a sign saying they thank God for America. And I even think that the Thanksgiving that we have here is celebrating the, if I'm, I don't know if I am, correct me if I am wrong.
Yeah, it celebrates the invasion of the invasion of the nation of Grenada by a foreign power. Yes, it does. Interesting.
And this is something I cringe every time especially when you see what's happening in America now, where black men is being gunned down in the streets like dogs. And here in Grenada, we are celebrating Thanksgiving Day for America coming to save us. Well, these things make me wonder, that I do hope that the younger generation do not carry this type of backward thinking, because America does not save anybody. America don't save anyone. There is lots of places and people that need saving, and America has no interest in saving them. Today is also the birthday for Hurricane Ivan. Somebody must say, so what is it, 17 years ago that the hurricane passed? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You were saying, you were speaking of Hurricane Ivan.
And today is also the birthday of Hurricane Ivan. I was told that. I remember sitting on the television in England, everybody getting feeling so anxious, going down to the High Commissioner, and trying to get any news that we can out of it. I remember phoning when we first could get through, everybody was so worried, and people was crying, and people was worrying about their loved ones. It was a really tough time. Were you in Grenada at that time?
Oh yes, I was there. I was there. I was working. I covered the hurricane from start to finish. Yeah.
Yeah, but going back to Phyllis, history always has a funny way of remembering people. It's the same like Sir Eric, look, passing now on and seeing his statue. I never thought I would have ever seen a statue of Sir Eric, the way people spoke about him. But I always said we always have to remember our leaders, whether they were good or bad, whatever the bad they did, we should use it as a stepping stone to make sure we do not make the same mistakes. But we cannot, it cannot be all bad. So I always think, I always believe in remembering the good.
The good and the bad, yes. And the thing about the revolution and Sir Eric, two periods when there was some really major negative issues happening during the revolution, with the torture of people and incarcerating people without charge and trial and so on. There was some ugly sides to the Grenada Revolution, but in some cases this is the nature of revolution. This is how you hold on to power that you seize rather than being given democratically. The revolution was not a democratic system. The constitution was not in force. There was the people's law was in force, and so a lot of bad things happened. But I think the revolution was beginning to settle down in terms of how anxious they would have been about the revolution being turned back from within. I think that the big concern was the United States, because what they understood and what everybody understood was that the United States would come at any moment. Grenada was a strategic point. Remember, the world at that time was on fire with the whole issue of communism and Cuba just up there to the north of us, and Guyana down there, and Grenada right there in the middle of this little island doing this big thing, and forming alliances with Cuba and Russia. And so we became dangerous to the United States view of the world. And so any opportunity they got, they would have come in. They didn't come in because they liked Grenadians and they were worried about us. They would have sat back and allowed all of us to die if there was no interest in it for them. Obviously, there was interest in it for them, and how helpful it was that our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and our Governor General here in Grenada were the ones who said, yes, please do come on in, and they came, and they themselves bringing a lot of negativity. The social condition of Grenada totally changed. Our economic trajectory, all of that changed with the arrival of the US. Their arrival did nothing good for Grenada. We cannot look back and say it was a positive thing that the US invaded Grenada. There was absolutely nothing positive. The invasion was destructive. It sought to destroy our view of the revolution. It sought to destroy the economic direction the country was taking. It sought to destroy the social direction the country was taking, and succeeded. And today we have this mess on our hands that the United States, and in their attempt to stamp out everything that had to do with the revolution to prevent its rising again, did some terrible things to the nation. And it really irks me when I see, every Thanksgiving, which also happens to be my birthday, October 25th, it really irks me to see us celebrating and paying homage to a foreign power that invaded our country. And you know what? Let the history books write what they may about the US invasion, but for us to be the ones celebrating and giving off a public holiday, giving over a public holiday to acknowledge an invasion of your nation, it almost feels like battered women syndrome, that the man beat you and you still go and cook for him to make sure he has dinner on the table. It is really one of the things that irritates me a lot, and I do hope that one of these days there's a government strong enough to come in and strong enough to repeal that holiday and to make October 25th a day, just a regular day. And really the day that we should honor and pay attention to would be October 19th, when our martyrs died, because we have to acknowledge the revolution did good things. But back to the point you were making, Rolanda, about how do we record and view leaders after they have died, or after the time has passed. Even so, Eric Gairy, when you look back, he played a pivotal role in the development of Grenada, in the image of Grenada, a lot of the things that he did. Now, even the revolution, they had their issues with him. They wanted to take him down. And so they came at him with some master propaganda. I mean, the propaganda, it was masterful. And to the point where they created Gairy into a devil. And not everything that we heard about him was true. This was a lot of propaganda by the forces of the revolution. It happens. You want to take somebody down. It happens even now. They're just not as good at it these days. Very inept at real proper propaganda. But they were really masterful at it back then, and totally had Gairy as a villain, which in some respects he wasn't. But he gave Grenada a good name. He always sought to give Grenada a good name on the international scene, and he had big dreams for the country, a small country that he wanted to do big things. And so we had some very big and interesting things happening to a small country back then. Of course, what happened during Gairy's time and revolution time, I'm still waiting to see even an hour of those glory days happening again, where I can look back and say, wow. But there's nothing that's wowing me from your boyfriend. He's just boring me these days.
But you had lots of people also saying, because of the revolution, it seems like it had frightened Grenada into speaking up. People are saying that Grenada is still suffering from the effect of the invasion and the revolution, but people seems to have lost their voice. What's your take on that?
No, I think that no one led the way. The people the freedom fighters who we had, the liberators, a lot of them ran away. Okay, a lot of them are now old men and old women in the United States. They left us. They didn't stay to continue the fight. They didn't stay to continue the message. They did not stay to continue to groom the youths to move forward in that way. They literally picked up sticks and ran to America and ran to England and ran to Canada once the revolution fell. And so we lost that. Then, of course, we had the very strong influence of the United States seeking to imprint on us a feeling of oppression that we must be, we okay, what's happening in in the United States today where black people are being made to feel inferior? They try to exert that kind of influence. They used their whatever strategies they would have used to to take away that fighting spirit and that independent spirit of the Grenadian people. It was a necessary part of what they were trying to achieve. They couldn't come, invade, and then walk out again. Not with the fighting spirit that the Grenadian people had at the time. You remember, we in the 6 days of the war that happened here, 5 or 6 days or whatever of the war that happened here, um, people defended their country. People put up a fight against the United States. Their number is that 19 soldiers died. Our side is claiming informally that more than 19 people were killed by Grenadians. So there were soldiers who were willing to stand on the front line and defend the nation. We weren't, afraid to stand up to the United States. And so understand they didn't just walk in here and take the country. It was not that easy for a country of our size. It was not that easy. The Cubans fought, the Grenadians fought, and the fear that the revolution would rise again required the United States to do certain things to turn us into the group of docile sheep that we are today. So they were part of it. And then, of course, the leaders who came, who made their deals with the United States and so on, had to continue to make us into docile sheep, so that what happened in 79 would never happen again.
But it's
So
funny,
it was a deliberate attempt to turn us into who we are now.
and many Cubans had died. It's only recently I found out that many Cubans had died fighting for the freedom of Grenada. And there are lots of people, as you said, Grenadians that had stand up. I was quite proud when I heard Grenada fought America, as I said, for 4 or 5 days. I think that for a small island to have put up such a fight. And the sad thing for me, for our people to have put up such a fight, and then there is this marking saying, "Thank God for America saved us." And you see in the book, they call it what? It's not. It was. They say it wasn't an invasion. It was a rescue mission.
A rescue mission and intervention.
It's sad, but as I said, I believe the next generation will be strong enough to maybe celebrate the Maurice Bishop and them, rather than the rescue mission, as we are calling it.
Rather than the invasion, we never say intervention and we never say rescue mission. Ever. We always say invasion. We are not part of the group of people who calls it anything but what it was. But one of the things though is that it became politically incorrect for them to continue to ignore October 19th and to ignore the death of the Grenadians who died during that period in October. And also in an attempt to get, the situation was used to get votes and to win over a particular demographic as well. So you found that the government began to acknowledge, and they would not designate it as a national holiday. They still haven't gone that far, but they begun to acknowledge it by laying a wreath for Maurice Bishop, and they go to the cemetery and put down a wreath for at the bottom down there. They do it down at the bottom, right? And so on. The Governor General would lay a wreath to the Prime Minister, and so on. And that is a major step forward for people who really have entered into a pact with the United States to not to pretend like Morris Bishop and the others never existed. Now they go up to the fort on October 19th. The government actually has a representative. I remember I used to go every year. I would go up on the fort on Fort George, renamed Fort George, and the government would never have a representative attend. It would be the family members and people from the Morris Bishop Patriotic Movement and other sympathizers and so on from the revolution. But the government never sent anybody to attend that. And in the latter years, they started sending a representative, I think. Yolan Bain always used to be there, but that's because her father was killed um, during the October 19th action. So she was never there as a government official, even when she was a member of the cabinet. She was there as a family member who lost somebody. But no, they're beginning to get involved in a way. And but for me, I just believe that it's political expedience. I don't think that they genuinely believe and acknowledge that our heroes died, and we need to do like all normal countries and acknowledge our heroes and make that a part of our history and make that a part of our story. We
Do you
haven't, our
think
children don't learn in the school about the glory days of the revolution, and they don't learn about the glory days of Sir Eric Gary. All they learn about is that, okay, he's the father of independence, end of story. It's not even put into context. What Gary did, Gary's own revolution, is not even put into context with the Grenadian story, so that Grenadian children can understand where we came from and where we are now and where we must go. It's not put into context. The revolution, not put into context. It's just, mentioned in isolation. And that again, I think is deliberate.
do you think we will ever know where Bishop and the others are buried?
Eventually we will. It will probably take a long time. But one of the things I understand about these things and about history is that eventually information like that, it will come out. Time is going to make it. It's not something that would happen now, but eventually it will come out, and it may not come out because of lobbying from Grenada or Grenadians. Unfortunately, it's probably going to come out because some intrepid journalist in the United States, and some white person at that, sorry for saying this, is going to dig, or somebody who has interest at the time in getting the information, or somebody who accidentally falls upon the information. But I believe eventually it will come out. The thing about it is that there are people who know, but we're still not at the stage of spilling the secrets of October 1983 in Grenada. The full story is yet to be litigated. The full story, as there are a lot of secrets. There are a lot of people walking around now with the secrets. A lot of people who are going to die with the secrets. People who are sitting in offices here in Grenada, and people who are having a beer with you at the bar, and so who know what happened, who won't say because of deals that were
Um,
made fair of the United States and that sort of thing. But there are people who know, I
if we go
believe.
to some of our listeners, Kellen Burb said, he posed that question to you. He said, what is your take on the state of martial law that existed after Morris Bishop and Cole's assassination? Won't you say Austin also installed fear into Grenadians?
Well, Kellen, one of the things that I found out, and I tend to believe it, is that Hudson Austin was not the mastermind of what happened in the days leading up to October 19th or the days after. Um, the martial law, certainly it was a fearful time. I remember that time. We packed up and went into hiding because mommy felt that we would be in danger if we stayed at our home on the main street down in Victoria, on the back street down in Victoria. Um, so it was a fearful time. I was what, 9, a child of 9 at the time, but I vividly remember everything and the feeling, the quiet quiet that happened after the guns in St. George's. You know, we hustled up from St. George's, and I remember how quiet it was when we got back home to Grenada and Victoria, and not knowing what happened. And by the time we got home, the word had come that Morris Bishop was dead. It took us about 30 minutes from the time the gunshots started. It took us about maybe 35 minutes to get home because our driver was a PRA, a member of the PRA, and he went, guns blazing up the western side, shouting to people who were on their way down to join the movement at the time not to go because there was trouble. And by the time we got there, Morris Bishop was dead, and the fair started from then. There was no fear up to the point when they freed him. It was like a carnival in town when they freed him, okay, coming down Market Hill. And so I was so little, I couldn't get a view of it. My mother was waiting by what used to be By-Right, no Foodland, waiting to hear him speak. She wanted to hear him speak, and so she was there waiting with a whole bunch of people. They were sitting, I remember the building in the market, the two-story building in the market where they do the spice. People were in that veranda upstairs. They setting up the PA and so on, activity happening, waiting because Morris was supposed to come there to address the people. And the next thing you know, gunshots all over town. We get home, it's announced that there is a curfew, and if you step out, you're going to be shot on sight. And then Edwin Frank's voice that's coming over the radio, with the announcements and so on. So it was a very fearful time. But from what I understand in my own investigations, it was not, while Hudson Austin was the leader of the armed forces, I believe he was at the time, Kelowna, it was not his doing that this was the instruction that he received from the people who had lost their minds a little bit and decided to mash up one of the best things that had ever happened to the country.
Wow. Kelon also say we will find out. I think he was referring to the question, will we ever find out where they are buried? And he said yes, when the CIA declassify these files. For me, I remember when it happened, I was in the UK, and it was quite mixed feelings. I remember there were people that was saying this was the best thing that happened. People couldn't come back. We was getting news from Grenada that, that's how people were scared. People couldn't speak. People didn't trust their neighbors. They couldn't trust their neighbors. Neighbors was bringing news on each other. Children couldn't trust their brothers. Brothers couldn't trust their sisters. Husband couldn't trust their wife. These were the type of things you was hearing from outside. Because although, the Queen is head of our state. Remember when Reagan came in, he never told Maggie Thatcher. And that was a big thing in England that, he invaded, Grenada, and the Queen is head of state, and no one knew about it. And America was saying they do not want, Russia in their backyard and things like that. But you was here, you grew up in the revolution as a child, and you are here now.
Yes, I was a proud member of the Pioneer, a child of the revolution.
Do you think if the revolution had continued, and going back, Morris Bishop and them was very young. They was in their 30s. I think they said he was 35.
When he died, he was 36 or so.
Yeah. Wow. So when you look at it, he was a baby. It makes me quite sad, because when you hear if you listen to Morris' speech is what he has. We had a gift. And people can see that we had what you call a leader. We had, when you travel and you say you're from Grenada, people will say the Caribbean. The first thing they will say is Bob Marley and Bishop. That's the only thing they know. They may not know where Grenada is, but everyone heard of Bishop and everyone of Bob Marley. And it makes you never realize how important Bishop was to us. And everyone, when you speak to the people that around Bishop age, even the children, and I always think now, if we didn't have the revolution, our crime rate would have been much higher. And I really do hope we honor Bishop in the way he should. When you look at it, everyone seems to have titles. Sir Eric Gary, Dr. Keith, and it's just Bishop for us, you know. And
because he's just Bishop for us because it's not disrespect, it's just love. He was of the people. I mean, you know, Bishop was not from the working class, eh? He in the Grenada social and economic structure, he actually was not from the working class. He was not from the Grenada poor. In fact, a lot of the and we call them the boys from the rebel. A lot of the boys who were involved in the rebel were not working class or poor. They were part of the middle class, and some of them were actually part of the bourgeois class. For instance, Peter David. Peter David was not of the working class and the poor. I don't think he was, based on his family circumstances even today. Morris Bishop certainly was not. So, however, they were able to raise a revolution that gave the working class and the poor empowerment and leadership. And if we forget just for a moment the incarceration without trial and the torture of the rascals in Hope Vale, and the torture of people at Richmond Hill, and so, which is, it's not good. It's not a good thing, obviously, but it happens when there's a revolution. If we take that away, it was they connected. It was a revolution for the working class, and they connected with the people. And that is why people feel so familiar and so comfortable with Morris Bishop that we just simply say Bishop. No, he had no titles. There was no Right Honorable. There was nothing like that. For him, obviously, he was simply Prime Minister Morris Bishop. But I think because of his demeanor, the speeches that he gave, and how he sounded, and the love for country that one heard in the speeches that he gave, the pride in speeches, just made him comfortable and made people just comfortable with the name. And so, yeah, it's not about disrespect. These days I hear people saying Keith a lot. I hear people saying Keith a lot these days, and I don't think it's about the connection, the grassroots connection. I think it's just that people are just fed up saying the Right Honorable Prophet.
Do you think we always speak
up to the name and the dream? By the way, he's not supposed to be right. Right is a title that is conferred upon you, and he was never conferred with the title of right. He's simply the Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell. He simply acquired the right. Some prime ministers were conferred with it. I think Robert Blaze was conferred.
Kalisha, we always speak about
conferred upon Robert Blaze. My mic was muted all the time.
No, yes, I was just saying we always speak about not teaching our children our history. I think it would be great to start with Bishop, especially what you see, where we're saying that people are frightened of speaking out. But, this man, he was just such a great man. It's such an honor, even with Sir Eric Gary, to really teach the kids, these people and them has really fought and really cared about Grenada. Grenada. It would be great to start teaching in school, our history, Grenada history, because we have a great history.
Well, at this point, I think we are still very much towing the U.S. line, so that the teaching about the revolution might not be something that we can do. We're still not realizing that we're not getting any benefit from the United States, and we really shouldn't care one way or the other how they feel or what they have to say about what happens in here in our internal affairs. But I think even our leaders here are afraid to put the revolution into context for our young people because it can come back to threaten the power that they are holding on to. I don't think anybody right now in frontline politics right now wants the youths of Grenada to learn about the rise of the revolution, the work of the revolution, the benefits of the revolution. I don't think they want them to learn about that because they might have a problem on their hands. And I don't think they want that kind of problem on their hands. So
But
I
that's
don't
why
see the revolution being a subject matter in schools anytime soon.
But that's why I've always said that the Chinese, with all the investment they're making, you will never see them building schools. Education, they're not interested in. You know, look at it, a place like where we need, every computer and laptops, every design is made in China. This is the type of thing we can get so cheaply for here. But if you educate, as I say, if you teach a child, you do not have to teach the adults. If and it just makes you see what Bishop and everyone was saying is just the truth. And as you're saying, if they teach that in school, the children will rise up when they are oppressed, and they wouldn't be scared of speaking up. So maybe, as parents, we have to maybe start teaching our children at home this type, their history, because nobody else, if we do not do it, nobody else would do it for us. I remember I was speaking to some friends when I was in England, and we was talking about our history. Most people cannot believe, even like religion. When people says to me, well, how many language do you speak? And I say, well, just English. And being a Black person, they cannot understand, well, how you only speak English. And one of the things is like we are proud, we just speak English. And what religion are you? Christian. And it's, well, how could you be Christian? I mean, the white people has never started a religion. All religion really has started by Black people. And well, how could you be a Christian? And, we just, anything that is Black, we were taught that it is bad, it is evil, it is wicked. But as I said, it's one of the nice things now that the young people that are growing up, they are not frightened of our history. They're not frightened of speaking up. And we can see what's even happening this last couple of weeks in Grenada. People are speaking up, with all what is going on in Mount Hartman, and, in even the older people are taking the lead and going and wanting to see what's going on. And it's a great thing, sitting back and people are having an interest in what is going around them. Like a year or so, when I was going through all my thing, I was thinking to myself, well, isn't people seeing what is going on? Isn't anyone going to say something? Everybody was just going to sit back and just listen, and nothing is going to happen. But it seems things is changing, and which is nice. People are standing up and speaking up.
Well, I think at one point people can only speak when they know what they have to say. I don't think that the narrative was yet formed for people to speak up. I think what the change that is happening now in the last few weeks is because the impact of the horrible place that Grenada is in has now hit home because of extenuating circumstances. Coronavirus came and brought the situation into stark relief for everybody. So now everybody's feeling it, and people are not going to stand up. Very few people are going to stand up and take the licks when they are not being personally affected, okay? The big-mouthed people or the freedom fighters and those sorts of people are very few. Everybody else, the masses must begin to suffer collectively in order for them to begin to speak, for them to form the narrative, for them to know what they have to say and to say it. And I think we've come to that point because the COVID-19 situation has
What can
impacted
you
the
find there?
masses on a whole. And
Whoa, you're the friend,
so now people have begun to speak, whether it will be sustained, whether the coronavirus crisis will pass. The government will find some funds again to put into the treasury to use for their political gain, and people will again be lulled into a false sense of comfort. Remains to be seen, or whether or not what needs to be done for the country to save the nation is done before they can bamboozle the nation again, is done in time. So it's a moving situation, a developing situation, but certainly the direction that it's going right now gives hope to people like me who understand, and people like you who understand that the country belongs to the people, and the voices to be heard are the people's voices, and the decisions to be made have to be in the interests of the people. That it's a good time right now. Yeah. But Rolanda, on the Mount Hatman situation, we were talking about the government and public servants. Remember, I told you that the government won't lay off public officers. It's too expensive, both politically and financially, and they would probably start selling off assets. I think we were chatting in your office, and I told you that that's the direction they would go. Was it you? I told that so the Mount Hatman situation doesn't surprise me. And then a friend of mine, a businessman in St. George's, called me and was saying, no, 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 they can't sell Mount Hatman. They can't sell Mount Hatman. And I'm saying, have we forgotten our history? We sold a plane so we can sell Mount Hatman, which is going to provide a lot more money in that sale. So it's sad, but I'm not surprised, and I would not be surprised if in fact there is a deal going on to sell Mount Hatman, because the government needs cash right now. They have a major cash flow problem. So during the revolution, we certainly would not have had to worry about selling our national assets. I don't think we sold anything during the revolution. In fact, we took stuff back, didn't we? Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners why Mount Hatman?
Why Mount Hatman? Why the quarry?
Yes.
Because we have very few things left to sell. Both the NDC and the NNP sold a lot of national assets because the country had constant cash flow issues, and so we sold a lot of things on the advice. Privatization was on the advice of the IMF at one point. Cash flow issues that we had here resulted in us selling things that we had. Our majority stake in the telephone company, the lights, buildings, and that sort of thing. We sold quite a few things. Now we are back to the situation that we were in back then, which is where the country has no money. Productivity is at an all-time low. Even the industries that we depended on have died as a result of COVID-19. So even before COVID-19, the government was contemplating getting rid of some of our national assets. I mean, the situation with Annandale Fall, leasing it out for whatever ridiculous length of time, the Granitang Lake and those places. I wouldn't be surprised if I wake up one morning and hear that the entire rainforest has been sold to the Chinese. This is something that this government would do without blinking an eye. And they are accustomed to doing these things, strange things, without the Grenadian public stopping the flow of life in Grenada for a while and saying, no, we will not move forward unless you fix the problem that you just created. They're accustomed to Grenadians not standing up and it's business as usual. They get to continue on and do whatever they want to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if our entire rainforest gets sold to the Chinese or the Russians or whoever comes up with the money, because it's a dangerous time now for us as Grenadians and our national assets, because the government doesn't have any money and never created an environment where we can continue making money in a time such as the crisis that is happening, the health crisis, the impact of the health crisis that is happening now. So, from time to time, we've had circumstances in the country that, and our leaders have felt that getting rid of.
But what will what is going to happen? We're supposed to have oil. We're supposed to have oil. Why are we selling our quarry? If we had a huge announcement that we had so much is oil and gas that we're all going to be rich, what's happening with this oil? Oops. Can you hear me?
You ready for me to speak on mute?
Yes, I was saying we're supposed to have so much oil. Why?
I don't know what happened to the oil and the gas. It's a problem that we need to solve. It may take a while for us to begin to benefit financially from it.
But can a government just decide to sell national asset just like that? Decide, right, we are going to sell, our quarry, we're going to sell the rent, and no legislation.
I mean, they can. Some things I believe may require an act of parliament. But remember, whichever government is in power always holds the majority and will always get whatever they want passed. Because, we have 15 seats in the parliament, and the majority would be 8, right? So you're always 8 or more up. There's never a case where the sitting government has less votes in the parliament. That would only happen if we have multiple parties in the parliament. That would only happen if we have multiple people in the parliament and multiple parties, in the parliament, and sometimes they would join together to vote against, and while the government may have the majority, added together, the opposition parties may have more votes, and while they would act separately within the parliament, and from time to time, they would come forward together to vote against something that the government is trying to pass or whatever. It is only under that scenario that we would ever see a bill fail in the House of Representatives of Grenada. So the government can always do whatever they want to do. The only thing that can stop them is the will of the people. The only thing that can stop them is the will of the people. Government can literally do whatever they want to do. The will of the people to take legal action against the government, or to take pursue and participate in civil disobedience.
It's frightening. It makes you wonder what will be left for the next generation, the next 2 or 3 generations. It's I don't think they would be. It will be great to see how they would be looking at these leaders, because when you look at it, when we got our independence, we haven't had many leaders. We had Gary, really solid leaders, and those that seems to have made it's what to me, coming back home, what it feels like, it seems like people like I was told that the NDC was more for Grenada, more or less like the same type of ideas like Bishop, but it seems people never liked them because they didn't want to sell enough things. They wasn't selling fast enough. They wasn't bringing in the money fast enough. So do you think that the government is pressurized to sell because we are putting the pressure on them? We want everything what the first world wants. We want the TV, we want the car, we want. And to give the people, you have to sell and sell everything. We can't expect everything to come free.
Yeah, well, Aja and Zizi want a lot of things, and I could sell the few pieces of land that they have in Maran and St. John, and give them what they want. But I won't. Does that give you my take on it? That you have to find other ways of dealing with the situation instead of creating long-term problems. Okay, instead of giving over your country to foreign powers, all right, because we never sell to local people. We never have like a consortium of local organizations, local businesses or so that we sell to. It's always foreign powers, and strange foreign powers at that in some cases. Um, so, and it's going to create a long-term problem where at some point Grenadians are not going to have a sense of investment and ownership in their country, right? Are we going to forever be the people who waxing the decks of the yachts and never the people who are owning the yachts and going up the islands? You know, so yes, the people want, but it's not the job of the government to give the people what they want. It's the job of the government to create an enabling environment so that the people can achieve what they want. You don't want a job from government. You don't want welfare from government. You want an environment where you can work, where you can be productive, where you can produce and write your own ticket. This is why government exists. Government don't exist to mine us. If that's why I have to depend on my government, then I'm a problem to the nation. All of the people who expect government handouts and welfare and plyboard to build houses, all those kind of things, all of these people who look at it as something that they are entitled to, that government must do for them, these people are a problem for the nation. What these people must be asking the government for, what they must withdraw their support. People will decide I'm not voting for them because they don't give me 2 pieces of plywood, or they didn't give my child a job in the public service to raise the wage bill higher. That's not why you're supposed to oppose the government. You're supposed to oppose the government because their economic policies don't make sense for you moving forward and doing what you need to do. You need to oppose the government because the expenditure on things like roads and schools and hospitals is not happening. These are the reasons why you must be upset with the government. Not because you didn't get a voucher to go to food fair to get some food that the government, that my tax dollars is paying for. Not because of those things. And I'm not opposed to the welfare system. Of course, every nation must have a system, a welfare system, because there will always be those among us who cannot do for themselves because of one reason or another, at a particular time, or for a long time, for a short time or a long time. So we must be prepared to deal with those people. That's what society is about. It's about sharing and taking care of those who are weaker than us. But having said that, there are people who just sit down out there waiting, and the NNP understanding that, but the NNP in particular understanding that, enables it and keeps people at their side and keeps people um indebted to them and oppressed by not, the big thing that it's Grenada is only 111,000 people or thereabouts, 105,000, 111,000 people, right? But one of the big things that the big expenditure that the government keeps talking about is social safety net programs. How is it in an island of 111,000 people, a social safety net? There was a time when there were 12,000 people who needed welfare support from the government. That's like 12,000 out of 110,000. That's 10% of the population. That cannot be right. The government has to enable people to do for themselves. All these strong, able-bodied people who cutting grass on the side of the road for 2 hours of the day in the debushing program. That's another welfare program, and we need to cut that out. We need to clean the side of the road in Grenada on a Sunday morning, or when we come out to church, those of us who go to church, and those who don't go to church on a Sunday, they go on a Saturday. Come out on Sunday morning and clean the country. You don't need to give people a job to cut bush on the side of the road. That's ridiculous. It's just another welfare, political grubbing program. And those things, we need to stop encouraging those types of things. We need an enabling environment so that we can work and we can be productive and we can build our country. We don't need the government to give us a work, and we don't need the government to give us food, and we don't need the government to give us material to build our house. We need the government to create an environment where we can do these things for ourselves. That's what we need.
I was speaking to a businessman today, and his rent, it's like he was paying rent which was nearly over $4,000 a month. And I said to him, why don't you go and buy a property? You would pay a lot less in a mortgage. And he said to me, the bank will not lend him the money. They will not give him, loan him. And when he said that, it made me feel very sad, especially when there are people that are coming from wherever they are coming from, and we are giving these people the support. And this gentleman is a hard working man. He does everything, and when he said he wouldn't get, I think to myself, well, how do we expect our people to grow if there is no...
But I mean, who gives the loans? The loans, okay, you have the Grenada Development Bank, which does the loans. There's government involvement in that. But the private banks, the commercial banks, you get a loan based on your credit rating and your credit worthiness. If you are not qualified, I don't think we're at the stage now where the banks don't give you loan because of who you are. The banks look at you on paper and decide whether or not they would give you a loan on paper. So if this man was qualified, he had some cash in the bank, he had some collateral, and the bank was still refusing to give him a loan, and that I would understand. But the government doesn't give people loans. The government not supposed to give people loans. The government does guarantee. The government.
I hear lots of stories where the government bails out companies, and you're hearing of things.
Well, the government doesn't really bail out companies. I mean, there are times when any government, anywhere in the world, would make a decision that there's a business that the country would suffer more if it's allowed to fail, and so stopping that failure in order to preserve jobs and to preserve their place in the economy, they would take action. This is a normal thing that governments would do from time to time. Whether or not there's fairness in doing it is a different argument that can be had. There are some, for instance, when the government bailed out with the tax break for two particular companies, the Grenada Bottling Company, when they gave them the bailout, I didn't see justification for that because I did not think that Bottling Company had a staff that was big enough to make it such a great impact for the country, and I didn't think that they played such a major role in economic development for us to go that far as to give them all these millions or whatever in a tax bailout. There are times when government would do it, but the government giving you a bail, taking action to ensure the survival of a business in order to preserve jobs and to preserve a particular economic situation is different from giving somebody a loan. A private citizen and a business are two different things. And the private citizen who can't get a loan can complain about whether or not there's an enabling environment in the country that allows him to meet the criteria of the commercial bank in order to get the loan. But he certainly can't complain that the government isn't giving him a loan because the government don't give loans.
I just reading a comment from Nicole, what made me laugh. She said, right now, the government desperate for money. So they're not bailing out, but looking to tax more. It's funny. I was in town with my brother today, and he said, "What's going on? There is police everywhere. The police and them. I was on the side of the road. I think if you stole your car, they was there to give you a ticket." I said to one police officer, "There is no money, so no use of trying to. They're everywhere looking for if you paid your tax and." They are there. I've never seen so many police
officers. Well, they are everywhere except at the bus port, at the bus terminus in town, making sure that the buses leave with people wearing their masks and so on. They're everywhere except in the terminus, ensuring that the COVID-19 health protocols are followed. They are not there. And while I know some of the stuff is not enforceable in law because we didn't get that crazy bill passed, so some of the stuff that are beneficial in the bill are not in law and so on. But they're not there. They're not there. They're back to doing the tickets thing, the government's big income generating scam of traffic violations. They're out there doing that. They're chasing the vendors around. And for me, I feel that it's something I want to talk about. I did an interview with a woman called Susan Andrews. She was supposed to come on the program on Friday night, but of course we had a bit of a technical snafu, and so we ended the program early. But I have Susan Andrew on tape, and I should have sent you that bit of video so that you can run it from Master Control where you are. But she is on the sidewalk selling like used books and other, little knickknacks and miscellaneous stuff because she's got to feed her children. And she was complaining to me that they have to be running up and down. She had a stroller that she was pushing her stuff around with, and she was saying to me, I have to be ready to move. And while vending on the sidewalk in town is illegal, we understand that. I was wondering how it is that at this time now that the police have been instructed to crack down on vending. This is not the time to crack down on vending. There are a lot of other stuff that's happening in the country. The social distancing protocols are being violated in certain business places that are sympathetic to the government and so on, and nobody's doing anything about it and so on. But right now the vendors are being chased around town. They're being told to go to the stadium. And I heard a police officer in an argument with a guy recently saying, well, he was saying if everybody's in the stadium, then the customers will come to the stadium because that's where you are. No, the customers are not going to come to the stadium. They're going to go to Foodland and they're going to go to Food Fair because that is still more accessible for them. They're not going to go to the stadium to behind the vendors. The vendors want to be where the customers are, and the market, of course, is they were moved from the market. They had to go up there. And they're not just that, there are people who don't have a market stall, people who are hungry out there, who need money to send their children to school, to feed their children and so on, to put food on just the basic food on the table, who are turning to vending. And when we saw this trend over the last 2 years because of how terrible the economy is and how horrible the government has failed in creating an enabling environment for the unemployment numbers to go down. Youth unemployment at 50% or somewhere there before COVID-19, probably much higher by now. So people are coming out more and more, and young people coming out more and more and selling. And then you also see the people over 60. I feel so sorry for these grannies who are supposed to have their feet up at this point, out there with little trays and so on, little things hustling. Every demographic in this country impacted by the situation, and the government has chosen, the Minister of National Security and the acting commissioner of police have chosen this time now to have the police chase around these mothers. I found it so strange that I heard Gregory Bowen at his last news conference saying that he worries about the single mothers, and I don't know if he may have heard you speaking at some point, Rolanda, but it was a line right out of your book of passion, the single mothers and so on. And all of a sudden, the single mothers was never something that Gregory Bowen talked about, but all of a sudden in a news conference the other day, the Minister of Works and Infrastructure is coming across as all compassionate and so on, that the single mothers, they feel it for the single mothers. And
giving anything. I wonder if they're giving anything because
but there's no program. No program has been specifically designed in this economically trying time to target the single mothers of this country. They haven't done anything about it. This was just him paying lip service. It was something that sounded good at the time during the news conference. You feel it for them, but you've had months to decide on something for them and you haven't done anything for them. Yes, so it's just more lip service. They're really good at talking, because even while he's feeling it for the single mothers, his government and his police force is chasing the single mothers around town who trying to make a $50 or $60 to buy some sugar in Foodland to go home. While sidewalk vending is not a major crime, it's not a crime against a person or anything like that. It is just a violation of an ordinance in the country. And at this time now, under special circumstances where you've moved them from the normal place of business, more people need to make a hustle. This is not the time for somebody blocking the sidewalk or something like that, of course we expect the police to enforce. But just to be specifically targeting them to crack down on people selling in areas not designated for vending, I found that was a bit heartless on the part of the government. Yeah.
Kalisha, I've been to a few. I went to a conference held by the government, and I was totally shocked to see the food that was served, knowing that there are children out there. And I mean, we could have all walked it with a snap because it was all adults that was there. There was just, you could have fish, you could have chicken, you could have had whatever, the feast. It was a real feast that was there. It was catered, it was delivered. And I could never understand this type of things when, in these times, as you were saying, mothers that are out there trying to send their children back to school, there is no money left. Today I had two young boys. We were bringing in some boxes, and they came and they said, "Miss, can we help you?" And I said, "Of course you can help." And one of them said, "Because I go into school tomorrow and I need the money so I can use tomorrow." And things like that really touches me, because if for the last 6 months, because of COVID, everybody that had a little saving, it has gone. Where are people, if you don't go and do your hustle out on the street, if you have 5 kids and you have to give them $1 a day for lunch, where are you getting the money? $5 is a lot of money when you haven't got any.
Well, life is a struggle. Sometimes money is scarce, very scarce. And we do what we need to do. Some people are going to have to do some things that don't make them feel good, that make them feel bad, that rocks at their self-esteem. Some people are just going to stay in the depravity and suffer. Some people are not going to make it. Some will. But when we get a chance to fix the circumstances that we are in, that's when the difference is going to matter. What do we do when we're given a chance to change the circumstances? How much of what we are going through has to do with the type of government we have is a question we need to ask ourselves. We are one of countries right across the world affected by COVID-19. Obviously, the government didn't bring COVID here. Well, my jury is out on that, because I think, we probably shouldn't have closed the borders in the first place. St. Vincent didn't, but we did, and we did it too late, and we ended up, I think we made our crisis worse. But while we certainly cannot blame the government for the coronavirus, it would be ridiculous to do so. The circumstances that we face that have been exacerbated because of COVID-19. How much of what we're going through now has to do with the actions of the government post COVID-19? How much of what we're going through now has to do with the actions of the government during the crisis? Those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves and decide on whether or not, the arrangements we have are arrangements that we want to move into the future with or not. Do we have better solutions or not? Some reflection and some assessment needs to be done by the ordinary working class people, by the masses of Grenada. And I believe that reflection has started. And because people who were once praising the system that we are currently under are now criticizing it. So, things are turning, and the government should not look at people's attitude right now and people speaking up right now as an attack on them. They should look at it as a scolding to do better by the people of the country. That when you're in an election campaign, it's one thing, but when you get the governance of the nation, you have to do right by the people. You cannot in good conscience not do right by the people. And I wonder if this government this term, the term before, the terms before. I wonder if they can really look back at their performance and say, did we really act in the best interest of the Grenadian people? Yes, we did. I'm not sure if yes, we did is the answer that they would genuinely come up with, because, you know, the situation in the country keeps getting worse. The poor keeps, I mean, we have a new class of poor in the country, and that's achieving, you know, that's really achieving something. When we've had revolutions to change a lot in life of the poor in Grenada, we are now creating a new class of poor and a new system of slavery under the Chinese in Grenada. We had two revolutions. So Eric Gary and the People's Revolutionary Government, two revolutions in this country to change a lot of the poor. And in the last 30 years, we've had people deliberately recreating the circumstances that existed prior to those revolutions. It's just wrong.
But when you
We're
think
all the
about,
time, though.
yeah, well, if I may, before we think, when you think about, there is two kids, they're not older than Zizi and Archer, that comes by every day with a liquor basket selling sweets and you know, things what their grandmother has made. And it's a little boy and a little girl. And when I see the little girl, it always worries me because, you know, sometimes I would stop and I would give, you know, when she come, I'll give her $5. I don't, there is anything I don't want, or $10. And I say, you know, make sure you keep that to yourself. We were down by Foodland, and there was this little girl, she couldn't be more than 10, selling skin up by the side of the, as you're coming out of the supermarket. Again, I don't know, but I will always give some money to them. And it makes you think, with all this child abuse that is going on, you know, when you see little girls on the street or even little boys like that, we are exposing them. Although I was told it is illegal to work, to have a job if you are, you know, I think until you are 16. I mean, and you find these little kids on the road, they're hustling. It reminds me of when I went to Africa. You're seeing children just on there hustling, selling everything. But, you know, I had made an appeal. There are people out there that can afford. Let us stop thinking about they should have saved their money or they are too lazy or whatever it is. And if whatever liquor we can give, you know, to our neighbors, or to, you know, there is a child down the road that maybe needs some school book. If you have old books at home that the children are going back, you know, let us try and look after each other and do the best that
Well,
we can.
you know, every time you say that, I have to agree and disagree with you. Yes, sharing is a major part of how society must work, but that cannot be the economic model for Grenada. These parents who are sending their children out to sell skin up so that they can have some extra money, these parents should have been in a factory somewhere manufacturing something that the world actually needs, you know, something from cocoa or something from nutmeg or something, one of those unique things that we have that we're the only ones who have it, or we're the only ones who do it that good. We have a lot of that we can have a sustainable job that pays a decent salary, a regular salary, so that they can make ends meet. Okay? The circumstances that we are under in the country is not created by, well, I shouldn't say it's not created by the people, because the people keep not asking more of their government in terms of making responsible decisions and implementing realistic policies that are connected to the people and the resources of the country. But how much, if you keep giving, you have, and you keep giving, you will eventually become one of the poor. I mean, there's a lot of money in Grenada, but the money is with a small group of people, right? So there are people who are generous, there are people who are helping, there are people who want to help, but how many people can you help, and for how long? That's not a good model. It may work for a while because of the coronavirus situation, but the coronavirus situation has simply just worsened what we've always faced. Giving is a natural part of society. However, there are other things that goes with it. Yeah, how about the governments that acting like a normal government and stop building hotels and build a factory, for heaven's sake, you know? And they're not even, these hotels are not even being built. You keep hearing about a hotel there, a hotel there. I mean, how many people are really employed at Silver Sands right now? And I shouldn't say right now, prior to COVID-19, right? How many people do these hotels employ? What, 50, 60 people? All of this thing about how much hundreds of people that the hotels are going to supply. The hotels don't need that amount of staff, um, even in the peak season. So how much employment can that create? And how much money can the country actually benefit out of that? Some of these new hotels that are coming, getting so much tax breaks from the government, it's not going to benefit us in any way. The model is wrong. The model is wrong. And the government has lost any creativity in terms of creating a model that is going to work for the Grenadian people. We need new ideas. So the Prime Minister, if he's going to stick around for a while longer, and we have until 2023 for the next election, should probably invite some people with some different, better ideas to assist him, because they've been at it for almost 30 years and things are not getting better, it's getting worse. And sometimes it's difficult to have patience when you see so many little children with these little baskets around town. The number of them, it's increasing. And you know that it's not, they're not doing it for pocket money, they are doing it for money for the household. You know, when I was little, I sold stuff. I sold carrots and onions and stuff like that. But this was my money. This was my mother teaching me how to sell, right? I took this was, I didn't have to give this money to her. She gave me a few pounds of this and a few pounds of that from what she was wholesaling. And I had my little customers, and this was my own little business that I was doing, like on a Sunday, on a Saturday and a Sunday. But what I'm seeing now with those children, while it's going to teach them the importance and the value of selling and stuff like that, they're actually doing it to help their homes. And that makes me uncomfortable, especially because it's not 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds, but little children who are like 8-year-old and 9-year-old children, and even some of them younger, and they're always unkempt, their hair not combed, their clothes dirty, their feet dirty and stuff like that. I mean, we can do better. This is not who we are as a people. We can do better.
Yep, I totally agree. Well, you know, we just have to keep speaking about it, and hopefully we will get changes. You know, Chanel said that she 100% agrees, have to hold the government responsible for providing job and sustainability to the population. Did you want to read anything from any of? Can you see?
Okay, I'm having trouble with my earphones here. So you're reading some of the comments.
Yeah. So we want to say goodbye and thanks for tuning in. Sorry for when it was on Friday with the difficulties that we had, but we're back on now. And thank you, guys. See you on Friday. You want to have anything to say, Kalistra, before we go off?
Okay. I didn't hear the last of what you said. We're ending the program now, yes?
Yep, we're going to end now until Friday.
Yeah. Well, but no, today's Monday until Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday. So we'll be back on Wednesday, and of course, thanks to I was having some audio problems a second ago. Thanks to all the people who have come on, Chanel Farry and Nicole Gittins, Kellon Bob. Lester Redhead has been watching, although he didn't comment on the program's feed. He's been watching and sent me an inbox and a note complimenting my take on some of the stuff that related to the revolution. Lester Redhead was part of that movement. So thanks everybody for viewing. I will see you on Wednesday night. Remember to share and make Miss McQueen happy. And remember to hold your government to account and make me happy. Bye, everybody.
It is time for Grenada to define for herself what independence means.
What has happened here this morning has made me feel confident to face the future with fortitude, strength, and with hopefulness.
People begin to understand that our lives don't have to be so hard. Things can change, you know.
We are all currently facing the same crisis and very similar challenges, and no one can afford to be myopic or bigoted in this fight. We have no choice but to work together.
We have heard the call, and we are determined to come out of this pandemic greater than we entered.